30 armored vehicles, 55 dedicated security personnel, including 10 elite commandos trained for counterterrorism operations, a private air force of 14 jets, and 3 helicopters worth over $880 million. Encrypted flight plans that change in real time. Advanced teams that sanitize routes hours before arrival. And all of it, every vehicle, every guard, every aircraft, every encrypted communication personally funded by one man, not subsidized by the Indian government, not provided by a security contractor. Paid for, directly, by Mukesh Ambani, a man worth nearly $100 billion, who commands a company generating over $150 billion in annual revenue, and who moves through the most congested city on Earth with the operational precision of a head of state traveling through a war zone. Watch until the end, because what you are about to discover about how the richest man in Asia secretly travels will reveal a transportation system so sophisticated that it operates as a private intelligence operation, invisible to the public, impenetrable to threats, and funded at a scale that most national security agencies would struggle to match. The threat why the richest man in India needs military-grade protection. Before we examine how Mukesh Ambani travels, we need to understand why he travels the way he does, because the security apparatus is not a luxury. It is a response to a threat environment that is documented, ongoing, and lethal. Ambani heads Reliance Industries, India's largest private company, operating across oil refining, petrochemicals, telecommunications, with over 500 million Jio subscribers, retail, with thousands of stores, media networks, and green energy. The company generates annual revenues exceeding $150 billion and employs hundreds of thousands of workers across a nation of 1.4 billion people. That scale of economic influence makes Ambani a target not hypothetically, but specifically. Intelligence agencies have documented terror threats and assassination plots directed at Ambani and his family. The 2021 bomb scare at Antillia, when a vehicle loaded with gelatin explosives was discovered near his residence, exposed not only the reality of the threat, but the corruption within the very police forces responsible for his protection. The Indian government's response was to assign Ambani Z+ security the highest category of civilian protection in India, equivalent to the level provided to the Prime Minister. The Z+ detail includes 55 dedicated security personnel and 10 elite commandos from the National Security Guard, the Black Cats, India's premier counter-terrorism unit, trained for hostage rescue, close protection, and high-threat response. But here is the detail that separates Ambani from every other Z+ protectee in India. Ambani funds the entire operation himself. The commandos, the vehicles, the technology, the communications, infrastructure, all of it is paid from Ambani's personal resources. The government provides the authorization and the personnel classification. Ambani provides the budget. The annual cost of maintaining this security apparatus, personnel, vehicles, equipment, technology, and operational coordination runs into tens of millions of dollars, creating a private security state that operates within the borders of a democratic nation but answers to a single individual rather than a government ministry. The decision to self-fund reflects a calculation that no government security detail, regardless of classification, can provide the level of protection that a man worth $100 billion requires in a country where the police force that was supposed to protect his home was itself compromised by corruption. When your protectors cannot be trusted, you build your own protection. And Ambani has built something that functions less like a VIP security detail and more like a private military operation staffed by commandos, equipped with military-grade technology, and operated with the secrecy and discipline of an intelligence agency. When a billionaire personally funds 55 security personnel and 10 elite commandos because he cannot trust the state to protect him, is that a failure of government or the inevitable reality of extreme wealth in a country of 1.4 billion people? Tell us in the comments. The Air Force, 14 jets, 3 helicopters, and a flying residence worth over $120 million. The first layer of Ambani's travel system operates above the ground entirely, because in Mumbai, the ground is the enemy. The city's traffic congestion is so severe that a journey of 15 kilometers can consume 2 hours during peak periods. For a man whose decisions affect a company worth hundreds of billions of dollars, 2 hours stuck in traffic is not an inconvenience. It is a cost measured in missed meetings, delayed decisions, and operational inefficiency that ripples across an organization employing hundreds of thousands of people. The solution is a private aviation fleet valued at over $880 million, approximately 14 jets and 3 helicopters that eliminate ground-level travel entirely for intercity and international movements, reduce intra-city commutes from hours to minutes. The flagship of the fleet is a custom Boeing 737 MAX 9 BBJ, a commercial aircraft converted into a private flying residence valued at over $120 million. The aircraft's range of approximately 6,355 nautical miles enables non-stop flights from Mumbai to virtually any major city in Europe, Africa, or East Asia. The interior has been stripped of its commercial configuration and rebuilt as a mobile command center with bedrooms, conference areas, secure communication systems, and workspace that allows Ambani to manage Reliance operations continuously during transit. The structural security features reinforced fuselage sections, encrypted communications, and classified defensive systems transform the aircraft from a luxury jet into a secure airborne facility that maintains operational continuity regardless of what is happening on the ground below. The helicopter fleet is centered on the Airbus H-161 of the most advanced civilian helicopters in production, supported by Sikorsky and Eurocopter models that provide redundancy and operational flexibility. The helicopters are the workhorses of Ambani's daily Mumbai operations, converting 2-hour ground commutes into flights of 10 to 30 minutes. The helipad atop Antillia, 3 pads on the roof of the 7-story residence allows departure and arrival without ever touching a public street. The pilots are recruited from military and senior commercial aviation backgrounds, men whose training, security clearance, and commitment to confidentiality are as important as their flying skills. Flight plans are encrypted and modified in real time based on threat assessments conducted by security teams that monitor conditions continuously. Multiple standby aircraft ensure that if any single helicopter or jet is unavailable, a replacement is operational within minutes. The aviation fleet does not merely transport Ambani. It insulates him, creating a layer of altitude, speed, and encrypted communication between the man and the city of 20 million people below. The convoy, 30 armored vehicles, bulletproof glass, and military choreography on public roads. When Ambani must travel on the ground, and despite the helicopter fleet, certain movements in Mumbai require road transit, the operation transforms from aviation logistics into military convoy doctrine applied to civilian streets. The motorcade includes up to 30 vehicles, each serving a specific function in a formation designed to protect the principal through layered defense, risk dispersion, and overwhelming visible presence that deters threats before they materialize. The primary vehicles are armored Mercedes-Maybach SUVs and Rolls-Royce sedans, luxury vehicles whose exteriors disguise ballistic protection rated to withstand high-caliber ammunition, improvised explosive devices, and chemical agent attacks. Run-flat tire systems allow the vehicles to maintain speed and maneuverability even after multiple tire punctures. The glass is multi-layered bulletproof composite thick enough to stop armor-piercing rounds but optically clear enough to maintain visibility for the occupants and the security personnel inside. The convoy includes dedicated medical support units, vehicles equipped with emergency medical equipment and staffed by trained paramedics, ensuring that medical response capability travels with Ambani at all times, rather than depending on the availability of Mumbai's overcrowded hospitals and ambulance services. The choreography of the convoy follows military VIP protection protocols. Advance teams precede the motorcade by hours, sanitizing routes, inspecting overpasses, monitoring intersections, coordinating with local law enforcement, and establishing communication links that allow the convoy commander to reroute in real time if any segment of the planned route is compromised. Family members travel in separate vehicles, a risk dispersion strategy borrowed directly from military doctrine that ensures a single attack cannot compromise the entire family simultaneously. The 55 security personnel are distributed across the convoy in a formation that places close protection agents immediately around Ambani's vehicle, with outer perimeter teams in lead and follow cars, scanning for threats from every direction. The 10 National Security Guard commandos, the Black Cats, occupy positions designed for immediate response to the most severe threat scenarios: armed assault, vehicle-borne explosives, or coordinated multi-point attacks. The convoy is simultaneously the most visible element of Ambani's travel system and the most superficial, because the visible armored vehicles and uniformed personnel represent only the outermost layer of a security architecture, whose most critical components operate entirely out of public view. When a private citizen moves through a democratic city with 30 armored vehicles and elite commandos, does that make him the most protected businessman on Earth, or the most imprisoned? Your analysis below. The routes Mumbai to Jamnagar and the logistics of running an empire from the sky. Ambani's travel is not random. It follows corridors dictated by the geographic distribution of Reliance's operations, and the most critical corridor runs between Mumbai and Jamnagar, the Gujarat city where Reliance operates the world's largest single-location oil refinery. The Jamnagar complex processes over 1.2 million barrels of crude oil per day and generates a significant portion of Reliance's revenue. It also houses the Vantara Wildlife Sanctuary, the Ambani family's private estate, and an expanding clean energy infrastructure that is central to Reliance's $110 billion investment in AI and renewable energy. The Mumbai-Jamnagar route is flown so frequently that the aviation operation maintains dedicated crew rotations and standby aircraft to ensure same-day availability regardless of scheduling changes. Beyond the domestic corridor, Ambani's international travel spans a network of destinations that reflect both business necessity and the family's preference for ultra-exclusive privacy. Trips to the Maldives, Switzerland, South Africa, the United Kingdom, Costa Rica, and the United States are planned with the same operational precision applied to domestic movements, private jet charters, luxury accommodations vetted in advance by security teams, and coordination with local protection services in each destination country. The cost of a single international trip, including aviation, accommodation, ground transportation, security, and staff, can run into millions of dollars. The family's annual travel expenditure represents a figure that most corporations would classify as a significant line item in their operating budget, funded entirely from Ambani's personal resources rather than from Reliance's corporate accounts. The logistics of managing this travel system require a permanent staff dedicated exclusively to transportation operations: pilots, co-pilots, flight engineers, mechanics, helicopter ground crew, convoy drivers, security coordinators, advanced team leaders, medical personnel, and communication specialists. The total headcount of the travel operation alone, before counting the 55 security personnel, likely exceeds 100 people whose sole professional purpose is ensuring that Mukesh Ambani can move from any point to any other point on Earth within hours, in complete safety, with full operational capability maintained throughout the journey. The travel system is not an amenity. It is a division, a self-contained operational unit within the broader infrastructure of protecting and enabling one of the most valuable human beings in the global economy. The invisible layer: encrypted flight plans, threat monitoring, and the security nobody sees. The paradox of Ambani's travel system is that its most visible elements, the armored convoy, the helicopters departing from Antillia's rooftop helipads, the Black Cat commandos, are the least important components of the security architecture. The critical systems operate invisibly. Flight plans are encrypted and transmitted through secure channels that prevent interception by anyone outside the immediate operational team. Routes are modified in real time based on continuous threat assessments conducted by intelligence specialists who monitor communications, social media, and law enforcement databases for any indication of planned hostile activity. The advanced team methodology is borrowed from presidential protection protocols. Hours before Ambani arrives at any location, a team inspects the venue, the surrounding streets, the approach routes, and the departure options, identifying potential vulnerabilities and establishing contingency plans for every scenario, from a medical emergency to a coordinated armed attack. Communication between the convoy, the aviation fleet, and the command center operates on encrypted frequencies that are changed regularly to prevent monitoring. The multiple standby aircraft jets and helicopters maintained in operational readiness at multiple locations simultaneously ensure that if a primary aircraft becomes unavailable for any reason, a replacement is airborne within minutes. This invisible layer extends to 24/7 threat monitoring, a continuous intelligence operation that tracks potential risks to Ambani and his family across every dimension: physical, cyber, financial, and reputational. The operation gathers information from open sources, private intelligence networks, and coordination with government agencies to maintain a real-time threat picture that informs every travel decision. The cost of maintaining this intelligence capability, analysts, technology, databases, secure communications, and coordination with external security consultants adds millions more to an annual security budget that already ranks among the largest private protection expenditures of any individual on Earth. The visible convoy is the show, the invisible intelligence operation is the substance. And the gap between what the public sees when Ambani's motorcade passes through Mumbai's streets and what actually operates behind the armored glass is the difference between spectacle and security. A difference measured in encrypted frequencies, classified threat assessments, and the knowledge that the most effective protection is the threat that never materializes because the intelligence operation detected and neutralized it before it reached the planning stage. The cost, what it means to move the most valuable man in India. And here we arrive at the final dimension, the economics of moving a single human being across a city, a country, and a planet, with the operational security of a head of state and the logistical complexity of a military deployment. The private aviation fleet alone, 14 jets and 3 helicopters, represents a capital investment exceeding $880 million. Annual operating costs for the fleet: fuel, crew salaries, maintenance, insurance, hangar fees, and regulatory compliance add tens of millions more. The ground convoy, 30 armored vehicles, each costing between several $100,000 and several $1 million, depending on the level of ballistic protection and customization, represents an additional capital outlay measured in tens of millions. The 55 security personnel, including 10 NSG commandos, require salaries, training, equipment, insurance, and operational support that collectively cost millions annually. International travel expenditures, private jet charters for routes beyond the fleet's capacity, luxury accommodations, ground transportation, local security coordination, and staff deployment can cost millions per trip. The invisible layer, the intelligence operation, the encrypted communications infrastructure, the advanced teams, the 24/7 threat monitoring adds a continuous operational expense that runs year-round, regardless of whether Ambani travels or stays home. The total annual cost of moving Mukesh Ambani across all modes, all destinations, and all security layers likely exceeds $50 million per year. For a man worth $100 billion, that represents approximately 0.05% of his net worth, a fraction so small that it is financially irrelevant. But the operational complexity behind that fraction is extraordinary. A system that employs over 100 dedicated personnel, operates a fleet of aircraft and armored vehicles larger than the transportation assets of some small nations, and maintains an intelligence capability that monitors threats across continents in real time. The system works. Ambani moves through Mumbai, one of the most congested, most crowded, and most chaotic cities on Earth, with the efficiency and security of a military operation. He transits between Mumbai and Jamnagar in hours rather than days. He reaches any major international destination within a single flight. He arrives at every location preceded by advance teams, surrounded by commandos, and insulated by layers of protection that separate him from the physical reality of the city below. The cost is enormous. The alternative, moving through Mumbai unprotected, relying on commercial aviation, trusting the same police force that was compromised during the Antilia bomb scare, is unthinkable for a man whose economic influence touches the daily lives of over 1 billion people. The travel system is not indulgence. It is infrastructure, the price of operating a $150 billion empire from the most densely populated city in the world, while remaining alive, effective, and beyond the reach of every threat that the combination of extreme wealth and extreme visibility inevitably attracts. Is Ambani's travel system the most sophisticated private security operation on Earth, or does any system that costs $50 million a year to move one person represent a failure of the society that makes it necessary? Your verdict in the comments. The secret travel system of Mukesh Ambani reveals 3 strategic truths about how the world's most valuable individuals move through environments designed for ordinary people. First, the self-funded Z+ security detail, 55 personnel, 10 NSG commandos, and an intelligence operation running 24/7 demonstrates that for individuals whose wealth exceeds the GDP of nations, government protection is insufficient, and private security becomes a personal infrastructure investment funded at a scale that rivals the budgets of state security agencies. Second, the $880 million aviation fleet illustrates that in cities like Mumbai, the most valuable commodity is not luxury but altitude. The ability to bypass 2-hour ground commutes with 10-minute helicopter flights, maintaining productivity and operational control that would be impossible from the backseat of an armored car stuck in traffic. Third, the invisible layer encrypted flight plans, real-time threat monitoring, advanced team sanitization, and classified contingency protocols reveals that the most effective security is the security nobody sees, operating behind the visible spectacle of armored convoys and uniformed commandos to neutralize threats before they reach the planning stage. From a private air force of 14 jets and 3 helicopters to a ground convoy of 30 armored vehicles. From a flying residence worth over $120 million to encrypted communications that change frequencies daily, from 10 elite commandos trained for counterterrorism to advanced teams that sanitize routes hours before arrival. What you have seen today is the complete anatomy of how the richest man in Asia moves through the world at a cost of $50 million annually and with an operational complexity that most governments would struggle to replicate. If this kind of deep analysis is valuable to you, hit like and subscribe. In the next episode, we will take you inside the private security operations of the 5 most protected billionaires on Earth. Defense systems so advanced that they function as personal intelligence agencies, answering to no government and no law.